A place to stay, number 21 from the Raven, Revenge, and the Reckoning. There was a knock at the door, sharp, sure. Mara looked up from the stove, wiped her hands on her apron, and opened it. "Morning, Miss Mara," the doctor said, stepping in with his worn leather bag in hand. She nodded, already turning. "He's in the back room, this way." The doctor followed her down the hall. Boots quiet on the pine floor. The air smelled of sage and soap. How's he been?" he asked. "Restless, staring at the ceiling too much. Snapped at me twice and apologized both times." "So he's healing," the doctor said, and Mara smiled at that. She pushed open the spare bedroom door, and Killian sat propped on the pillows, still and watchful. His eyes flicked between them, cautious but calm. "Well," the doctor said, setting down his bag and pulling out his tools, "let's take a look." Killian held still as the doctor examined the wiring, the swelling, the set of the jaw. He gave a soft grunt, winced, then nodded. The doctor leaned in. "It's time." He began snipping the wires, gentle and precise. Mara stood at Killian's side, her hand near his, not touching, but close. As the final clip gave way, Killian exhaled through his nose, jaw trembling just slightly. He moved it, just a hair, then again a little wider. It cracked faintly. His eyes watered. The floor creaked, and all three turned. Lottie stood in the doorway, silent, arms wrapped around herself, watching. Mara gave her a soft look but didn't send her away. Killian worked his mouth open and shut, slow and tight. Then he whispered something gravelly, the first real words from him in weeks. The doctor smiled. "You'll be sore, but you're good, son." The afternoon sun cut through the curtains in the long gold lines as the doctor stood to leave. "You're clear to move around now," he said, slapping his hat against his thigh. "Just don't lift anything dumb or punch anyone for a week or two." Killian gave a low grunt of acknowledgement and flexed his fingers, testing the arm, now free of bandages. It ached, but it worked. His ribs still felt like someone had built a fence through them, but he could breathe. That was something. "I'm going to walk a bit," he said, muttered, voice gravelly but intact. Mara, stacking dishes in the basin, paused. "Don't be long. I'm making cornbread. Wasn't planning on heading for Kansas." He slipped out the front door into the light, the boards creaking under his boots. A few steps later, he heard soft feet behind him. "I'm coming," Lottie said. They didn't speak much as they crossed the yard, only the shuffle of gravel and the distant whinny of a horse filling the air. At the corral, the horses looked up, ears forward, cautious. "Want to brush Buck?" Lottie asked, already grabbing the bristled tool from the rail. Killian nodded. She handed it to him, and he stepped closer to the rail. He stepped closer to the tall gelding. Buck shifted but didn't pull away. Killian raised his arm slowly, brushing down the horse's shoulder, his movements stiff but steady. "You're good with him," Lottie said quietly. "Good horses don't make it hard," Killian replied. They worked in silence a moment. The sun warmed their backs. A breeze lifted the dust just enough to make it shimmer. From the porch, Mara's voice called through the darkness. "Tell Sam and Bill Puck to come in for supper. I need all of you at the table." The table was full of plates, beans, fresh cornbread, a roast pulled from the Dutch oven, and a big bowl of stewed peaches in the center. Sam had already taken 2 helpings. Bill Puck ate slow, methodical, always watching, saying little. Mara sat at one end and Lottie at the other, and Mark directly across from her, still testing how much he could chew without wincing. Once the clatter of plates slowed, Mara set down her fork and cleared her throat. "All right," she said, "let's talk." Sam leaned back, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I figured this was coming." "You told me before," Mara said. "You didn't want to be foreman. You were filling because we had to have somebody. Not because you wanted it." "That's right," Sam nodded. "I'm a jigger boss, and that's what I've always known. I don't want to deal with buyers and broken fences and payrolls." Mara turned. "Mark," she said, "I'm offering it to you." Killian paused, fork halfway to his mouth. He looked across the table at Bill Puck, who gave a slow, steady nod without a word. "Are you sure?" Killian asked again. "I'm sure, Mark," Mara said. "We need someone solid. You're solid." Killian set his fork down. "All right, I'll do it." Mara nodded, satisfied. "Good." Bill finally spoke. "You'll do fine." They fell into silence again for a moment, chewing, thinking. Then Lottie piped up. "What about Dodge?" Sam wiped his mouth. "We're close. A few more days of prep and we'll be ready. It's about 250 mile with 2,000 head, and we'll need a tight crew." "We've got 5 hands," Mara said, "plus Bill, plus Lazarus for cook. Jess makes 8. Sam makes 9, and Mark makes 10. And we'll need someone to drive the chuck wagon," Killian said. Mara smiled. "I'll drive the chuck wagon. Lottie'll ride with me." Lottie grinned. "That puts Lazarus in the saddle," Sam said. "Good. He wants to ride anyhow. Wagon suits you too fine." Mara nodded. "We'll get someone to watch the stock while we're gone." Killian leaned back in his chair. Then we've got a plan. Bill nodded once more. It's a good crew. We can make it. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the windows gold. For the first time in a long while, it felt like the whole house was breathing. The chair scraped softly as the meal wound down. Lottie began clearing plates, and Sam was already yawning as he stepped toward the porch. Bill Puck tipped his hat low and slipped out with a quiet evening. Mara glanced over at Mark, who was standing slow, working the stiffness from his side. Feel like a walk, she asked. He nodded. Reckon I can manage it. They stepped out into the cooling dusk, the last light curling along the tops of the cottonwoods and dancing across the barn roof. The gravel crunched softly beneath their boots. You been to the North Pasture yet? She asked. Not yet. Come on, then. They made their way past the corrals where a few horses stood dozing through a narrow gate leading out behind the barn. The air smelled of sage and dust, and the moon was beginning to rise. This place, she said, gesturing wide, is about 10 sections. Another 4 I leased from the government. Most is grazing, except for 2 sections north of the house we use for hay. We're working on getting irrigation on it now. Hopefully we can finish it after we sell the herd of 2-year-olds. I'm selling all the steers and heifers this year. We have 2,200 head of mama cows, and maybe next year we can keep the heifers. It's more than I planned on running by myself after Jerry passed. She paused a moment. Here we are. Killian looked out across the land. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was just familiar. Do you ever think of selling, he asked. She looked at him sideways. Sometimes, only when it's cold or the well runs out of water in mid-August. She looked at him and smiled. Now that I've got you, maybe we can hold the place together. Well, I didn't know I was going to be managing a big ranch like this, but I think I might enjoy it. Mara smiled back, and it's going to give me a break off. It's been rough on me since Jerry died. They walked a bit further before she looped them back toward the house. The stars were out now, and the porch light was glowing soft yellow. Inside, Lottie had already gone up. Sam was stretched out in the chair snoring. Mara reached the hallway, then turned to him. You can just keep the spare bedroom if you want. Killian hesitated. I can move to the bunkhouse. Don't mind. I do, she said. Stay where you are. He gave a short nod. Thanks, he said, his voice quieter than before. Good night, Mark. Good night, Mara. The house had gone quiet. Wind whispered at the windows. A distant owl called once and was still. A little while later, Mara walked down the hallway, stopped, one hand resting on the frame of the spare bedroom door. The oil lamp in Killian's room had been turned low, casting just enough glow to make out the shape of him laying on the bed, one arm tucked behind his head, the other resting across his ribs. She stepped inside, soft on her feet. Killian stirred but didn't sit up. You need anything, she asked. His voice came low, rough, edged. No, ma'am. She gave a slight nod, eyes moving across the room. The chair pulled back from the table, the boots by the door, the stack of folded bandages she'd set there earlier. I left the lamp on in case you wake up dry-mouthed. Appreciate it. She hesitated a beat. All right, then, good night. He shifted just once to glance at her. Good night, Mara. She closed the door softly behind her. Outside, the sky was wide. Clear stars scattered like bone chips across the black velvet. Mara walked to the edge of the yard, arms folded against the chill. The grass hissed underfoot. Somewhere a coyote yipped once, then fell silent. She stood a long while looking out toward the north pasture, then turned toward the corral. The horses stood in shadow, drowsy and still. Buck lifted his head as she approached and then dropped it again. She leaned against the rail, one boot up on the lower rung, and let her thoughts rise. Jerry had been gone 3 years now. She still missed his laugh most of all. The way he could make even stubborn steers seem like part of the joke. He'd left her this place, this land, these fences, and for a while she hadn't been sure she could hold it. And now, maybe. If the cattle sold well, if the drive went smooth, if Mark stayed, she let herself imagine it for one long, slow breath. Not just surviving this place, but building it into something worthy of the sweat that all poured into it. And maybe, just maybe, not having to do it alone. The sun rose clean and gold over the east ridge, warming the roof shingles and drawing steam from the dew-covered grass. The scent of coffee and horses mingled in the air as the Muleshoe Ranch stirred to life. Killian was already at the corral, boots on, hat low, a tin mug of black coffee gripped in his right hand. He stood quiet, watching the horses shift and stamp in the pen. The 4-year-olds looked strong, green but sound. They'd need shoes before the drive. Every man needed at least 3 fresh mounts, plus mounts for Mara and Lottie, maybe even a spare. The herd wouldn't wait for lame stock. Sam ambled up beside him, shirt tails half untucked and yawning. He squinted at the sun and then at Killian. "You sleep any?" "Some," Killian said. "You?" "Barely. That damn new guy snores like a freight train." Killian chuckled faintly and then cut short by pain. He grimaced, then pointed toward the horses. "We start with the roan. He's a kicker. Get him out of the way first." He turned his head toward the tack shed when Mara's voice came sharp from the porch. "Mark, don't you even think about shoeing any horses today yourself." He stopped mid-step. "You're not doing any shoeing. You can plan, direct, delegate, yell, whatever it is a foreman does, but you're not bending, pulling, or getting stomped with your busted ribs." Killian turned halfway, arching a brow. "I've shoed horses in worse shape, and I've patched up men who thought they were made of iron." She crossed her arms. "Try me." Sam let out a low whistle. "She's right, you know." Killian grumbled something under his breath and tipped his mug to her in surrender. "Fine, I'll oversee." By mid-morning, the corral was alive with motion. Sam, Jess, and Bill Puck had horses tied off, one being held while another was worked. A small forge smoked inside the fence line. The rhythmic ring of the hammer to the anvil mixed with the occasional grunt, curse, and snort of hot breath from the animals. Killian stood leaned against the fence, arms crossed, keeping his eyes on the hooves. The heat, the boys, and the way the day was stretching. They cycled through the first string fast. Each man checked his own rig. The roan threw a fit just like Sam predicted, and the little white mare was worse, but they got it done. Jess had a grip like iron and turned out to be a prolific at shooting horses. Bill Puck moved like a man half his age, shooing with a calm precision. Mara came by with a water bucket, handed Killian a second cup of coffee, and then stood beside him watching. "They're good horses," she said. "They're going to get a hell of a test," Killian replied. Mara nodded. "So are we." By afternoon, the work shifted. The chuck wagon was pulled into the yard, and Lazarus Smith, the cook, began making his rounds, checking wheels, oiling hinges, and taking inventory of dry goods. They laid out the gear: bedrolls, coffee tins, flour sacks, Dutch ovens, dried beans, pickled onions, pickled beef hearts, hardtack, jerky, spare tack, and a battered fiddle tied up in a grain sack that Lazarus swore he hadn't touched since the war, but would bring anyway. At sundown, the crew circled up near the barn for one final check. "We've got 2 days," Killian said, stretching double check every rope. "We've got 2 days," Killian said, stretching double check every rope, every shoe, every stitch of gear. "If it breaks on the trail, we're patching it in the dark with coyotes singing backup." Jess grinned. Sam spit in the dirt. "We'll be ready." They broke up with the last light fading. The smell of stew floating from the kitchen. The ranch was quiet again, but there was something changed in the air now, like the land itself knew they were about to roll out. The crew peeled off toward the bunkhouse, boots dragging, shoulders sagging, bellies ready for whatever Lazarus had thrown together. The smell of salt pork and beans drifted in the cool evening air, and someone let out a low laugh as the bunkhouse door creaked open. Killian, Lottie, and Mara walked up to the main house together, gravel crunching underfoot. Lottie was quiet, tugging at the hem of her skirt, and Killian noticed the way she glanced between him and Mara now and then. He said nothing. Inside the house was cooler. Mara lit the oil lamps. They cast soft golden halos across the floorboards. Mara set to work without asking, pulling bread, meat, pickles, and a jar of mustard from the icebox. "Nothing fancy," she said. "It's fine," Killian replied. They sat at the table, just the three of them. Lottie asked if there was any cookies left. Mara nodded. "Yes, in the larder." Killian ate slower, still easing his jaw, but there was something steady in it now, like a man easing into a rhythm that might just suit him. They didn't talk much, just a few quiet things: weather, supplies, horses. Lottie excused herself first. Mara watched her climb the stairs and listened for her door to shut. "I should turn in," Killian said. Mara stood and gathered the plates, not looking at him. He made it to the hallway, stopped near the door to the spare bedroom, reached for the knob. "Mark." He turned. Mara stood in the kitchen doorway, fingers twisted in the hem of her blouse. She opened her mouth like she meant to speak, but closed it again. Her eyes searched his face for a second, too long, and then she gave a tiny shake of her head. "Never mind," she said softly. She turned and walked down the hall to her bedroom. The door clicked shut. Killian stood still a moment, his hand on the knob. Then he stepped inside his room, closed the door behind him, and sat down on the edge of the bed, the light from the hallway still pressing faint and amber under the door. Lottie lay on her stomach, chin propped in her hands, eyes wide in the dark. The lamp had been turned down an hour ago, but sleep hadn't come, not yet. Outside, the wind rustled in the cottonwoods, and she could hear the faint sound of someone moving in the bunkhouse, probably Jess or Bill going outside. Somewhere a horse snorted. She turned her face into the pillow and then back again. Killian was staying. That thought buzzed through her head like a warm current, not just passing through, not just resting, but staying. He didn't talk much, and half the time he looked like he'd rather be alone. But he was different, quieter than Sam, heavier in some way, but not just from being hurt, but from everything inside him. She liked watching him with the horses, the way he moved, the way the horses watched him back, like they trusted him without needing reasons. And Sam, she smiled, a little face half buried in the quilt. He was loud and funny and always teasing her like she wasn't a kid, but not like she was a grown either. Somewhere in between, he had a way of tossing his hat back when he laughed that made her heart flip once and then settle. She didn't know what it meant, any of it, only that something felt different this summer, like the world was tilting toward something new. Tomorrow they'd pack the chuck wagon, 2 more days until the drive. She'd never been past the county line. Her fingers tightened in the blanket. Maybe out there on the trail under the stars she'd find out who she was, growing into. Maybe she'd stop being just Lottie, a child, and start being something entirely different. She closed her eyes and finally sleep began to find her.